Om Namah Shivaya children, good morning. So I hope you are clear with dicot and monocot root. Let us now start with the next anatomy, which is the dicot stem and monocot stem. Okay, so first let us start with the dicot stem or the dicotyledonous stem. So as like other plant body, the epidermis is the outermost part of this dicot stem. So we will be learning about the transverse section of the typically young dicotyledonous stem, and it has various parts in it. So if you see the first part, which is epidermis, it is the outermost protective covering. You can see it here. This is the outermost protective covering, and it is covered by a thin layer of cuticle which may bear trichomes and few stomata. Right. So what does the epidermis covered by? It is covered by, its outer part is covered by thin layer of cuticle. Okay, and sometimes they will have trichomes which are hair like appendages, and few stomata also in the epidermis. Right. Now coming to the next portion, starting from this part below the epidermis till the pericycle, it forms the multiple layer of cells which is commonly called as the cortex. Okay, so this part and this part, the outermost portion, together it forms the cortex. So multiple layers of cells arranged between epidermis and pericycle. Okay, so this is the epidermis. So in between this epidermis and the pericycle, so the second layer from this pink colored structure is the pericycle. Right, so all these multiple layers of the cells are arranged in between epidermis and pericycle. Right, and this multiple layers of cells, it consists of 3 subzones. It means that each of these places is occupied by different types of cell. So if you take the first part, which is called as the hypodermis, you can see after the epidermis there is a layer which is called as hypodermis. So you can see a structure which is pink in color, right? So this part, so this is called as hypodermis. What is it? It is called as hypodermis. And then comes the cortical layers. Right, so after this it has the cortical layers, and last comes the endodermis. Right, so this outermost part is the endodermis, and below that endodermis is the pericycle. Right, so multiple layers of cells arranged in between epidermis and pericycle, and it consists of 3 subzones, which are the 3 subzones: hypodermis, then cortical layer, and then comes the endodermis. Right, now let us learn about each of this in detail. So if you see the first part of this cortex, which is the hypodermis, it is the outermost zone just below the epidermis. So after the epidermis, the stem has the type of cell which is called as the collenchyma. Right, so below the epidermis, that is just below the epidermis, it consists of a few layers of collenchyma, and this layer is called as the hypodermis. I hope you are clear with this, right? So this part is called as the hypodermis. So it is a portion which is just below the epidermis. The epidermis is the outermost portion, and below that is the presence of several layers of, that is, few layers of collenchyma cells, and they provide mechanical strength to the young stem. What is the function of this collenchyma cell? They provide mechanical strength. And then comes the cortical layer. Right, so what is this cortical layer? Below the hypodermis, it consists of rounded, thin-walled parenchyma cells. Right, so it was the collenchyma cells just below the epidermis, and this cortical layer, it consists of round, thin-walled parenchyma cells with conspicuous intercellular space, which means that clearly visible intercellular spaces are seen in this layer. You can see this is the layer called as the cortical layer, and this cortical layer, it is made up of the rounded, thin-walled parenchymatous cell. Okay, and how's the intercellular space? These will be clearly visible. Okay, now coming to the next one, which is the endodermis. So after the cortical layer, we see the outermost layer, which is called as the endodermis. Right, so this is the innermost layer, and the cells are rich in starch grains. Okay, so this endodermis, it is the innermost layer, and these cells are rich in starch grains, and so it is called as starch sheath. Okay, what is it called as? It is called a starch sheath. With the children, so cortex can be divided as hypodermis. What does the hypodermis have? It is made up of few layers of collenchyma cells. And where is it present? It is present just below the epidermis, right? And what is the function of it? It provides mechanical strength to the young stem. And comes the next layer, which is called as cortical layer, right? And where is this cortical layer? It is below the hypodermis. And how is it made up of? It consists of rounded, thin-walled parenchymatous cell with conspicuous intercellular spaces. And then coming to the next layer, which is called as endodermis. So this endodermis is the innermost layer, and cells are rich in starch grains, so it is also called as starch sheath, right? So clear with this diagram, no children? So you can see the outermost part. I'll just show it. You can see the green colored portion, which is called as the epidermis, right? So just below the epidermis, you can see some pink colored cells, collenchyma cells, which is called as the hypodermis. And then comes the next layer, which is called as the cortical layer. You can see it here, right? So this green colored structures are the cortical layer. Okay, and how is this made up of? It is made up of rounded, thin-walled parenchymatous cell with conspicuous intercellular spaces. Okay, and now coming to the next layer, which is called as the endodermis. So in this structure, the outermost layer is the endodermis, right? Now what is the function of endodermis? It is the innermost layer. The cells are rich in starch grains, and so it is called a starch sheath. Okay, clear with it? So if you see this diagram, you can see the epidermal hair or the trichomes, and then comes the epidermis, and then below the epidermis is the hypodermis, and then comes the cortical layer, and then comes the endodermis, right? So this is the endodermis portion. Now let us move on to the next part, children. Okay. After endodermis, what did we see in the Dicot root? It was the pericycle. Same way here also, the following parts are seen after the endodermis. So pericycle is present on the inner side of the endodermis. Where is pericycle present? It is present in the inner side of the endodermis. So this is the outermost endodermis layer, and below the endodermis is the pericycle, right? So it is present on inner side of the endodermis, and above phloem are semilunar patches of sclerenchyma. Okay, so where are they present? They are present on the inner side of the endodermis and also above the phloem. You can see the phloem here, right? So these are blue colored structures. You know it as a vascular bundle, right? So these pericycle are present on the that is on the above the phloem as semilunar patches of sclerenchyma cells. Which cells are found in the pericycle? It is the sclerenchyma cells. So what is the semilunar patches? These are nothing but rounded patches, or rather than that, what to say, structure which is crescent shaped. All these structures are found in the pericycle portion. So pericycle, it is made up of the sclerenchyma cells, which are seen as semilunar patches, and also it is present above the phloem. Now coming to the next part, which is called as the medullary rays. So what is these medullary rays? Few layers of radially placed parenchyma cells between vascular bundle. You can see the vascular bundles here. So in between the vascular bundles, you can find many cells. So these are called as the medullary rays, right? So few layers of radially placed parenchyma cells between vascular bundles are called as the medullary ray, right? So vascular bundles nadukku namakku kaanan pattunna radially placed parenchyma cell, right? So they are present on the radius, and they form the medullary ray, right? So it is few layers of radially placed parenchyma cells between vascular bundles. Now coming to vascular bundle, these are large in number. They are conjoined and open. What is this conjoined? So what is conjoined and open? It means that it is based on the presence of cambium. It can be conjoined open or conjoined closed, and if the cambium is present, we say it as the open type, right? So conjoined and open type. Conjoined means they are present in the same radius, right? So they are found on the same radius. They are not present on alternate radius. They are present on the same radius, and they are open also, which means that they have cambium in them. And the ring arrangement is a characteristic of dicot stem. So due to the presence of cambium, we know that secondary growth of xylem and phloem will happen, right? So this ring arrangement is a characteristic of dicot stem. We did not see that in dicot root, right? And what about the protoxylem? The protoxylem is endark, right? So I hope you remember about endark and exarch, right? So the protoxylem is endark. And what about pith? These are the central part. Many round parenchymatous cells with larger intercellular spaces are seen. So you can see this pith portion. So it is a central part which has many round parenchymatous cell with large intercellular spaces. Cells in a space it is present, and these are made up of parenchymatous cell. Clear with the children? Okay, now let us move on to the next part, which is the monocot stem. So if you take the case of this monocotyledonous stem, we can say that it includes the epidermis, the sclerenchymatous hypodermis, vascular bundle, and large conspicuous parenchymatous ground tissue. So all these are present as such in the dicot stem. Only difference is many and scattered conjoint and closed peripheral vascular bundles are smaller than the central ones, right? So it means that in the case of the dicot stem, we saw that there were only few vascular bundles present, but here there are many and scattered vascular bundle. You can see it here. These pink colored structures are all vascular bundle. So there are many vascular bundle and they are scattered. Real. So what is a scattered? It means that it has been distributed to every part of the stem. And how's the peripheral vascular bundle? These are smaller. Can say it here, right? So these are smaller than the central ones. So central ones will be little bigger than the peripheral vascular bundle. And each bundle is surrounded by a sclerenchymatous bundle sheath. Okay, so each of these vascular bundle, it is surrounded by a sclerenchymatous bundle sheath. Okay, so in the next part you will be hearing this term called as bundle sheath. So please remember, what is it? In monocot stem, near each vascular bundle it is surrounded by sclerenchymatous bundle sheath. Then coming to phloem parenchyma, it is absent, right? Phloem parenchyma is absent and water containing cavities are present within the vascular bundle. Means that the parenchyma cells near the phloem will be absent and water containing cavities are present within the vascular bundle. So inside the vascular bundles we can see the presence of the water containing cavities. Clear with the children? Can we move on to the next part, which is called as dicot and monocot leaf? Can we carry on? So all other things are very similar in the dicot and monocot plants, but there are few differences, like there are many and scattered vascular bundle, they are conjoined and closed, and peripheral vascular bundles are smaller than the central ones, and each bundle is surrounded by a sclerenchymatous bundle sheath, and phloem parenchyma is absent. Water containing cavities are present within the vascular bundle. Clear? Now let us move on to the next part, which is the dicotyledonous leaf. It is also called as dorsiventral leaf.